I think it's great to have a series of type of papers we love, because I think that, you know, the ideas of computer science are so interesting and so ingenious and so rich and diverse that it's a great thing to do as a coalescing topic. So this one is about, I was first inspired by this when I heard talks by Andrew Goldberg, who's my colleague at Microsoft Research, and he gave me this talk about a problem that I thought was way back in the 1960s sorted, but it turns out that the shortest path problem has been not just around for a long time, but is in very active stage of development, and it embodies some really clever ideas. So I hope that by the time you go away tonight, you'll think, A, shortest path algorithms are much more interesting than I thought, and B, there's some really clever ideas that I actually understand now that I didn't know about before. So I hope you get some of that, right? And so it would be much more fun for me if you would do me the honour of interacting as we go along, ask questions, make comments. We will nevertheless finish within an hour. Right, but one way or another, by skipping if necessary. But it's more fun to sort of stay together and engaged, actively, engaging with the material, rather than to slump back, the end of what's the day? Thursday, yes. You're in a good part of your week, right? So don't slump, because we're going to have lots of actual ideas. Okay, so far so good. Here is the setup. Well, I want to find, my way from here to Rome. So you do all this web page stuff, and you say, get me directions. We do, I did this on the way here just to find my way from London Bridge. And so what's going on? So something is happening on your phone. And of course, this is just the shortest path algorithm of all sort of streets and connections, which the computers know about. And there are well-known algorithms that are fast enough on, big computers, right? That is, even doing a, Dijkstra type thing that I'll show you on a serious computer will be fine for this. But on a handheld machine, it's really not quite as fine. Right, they're pretty powerful, but not that powerful. And moreover, if we could do a better job, I mean, even if you got a well-known algorithm and you could figure out a better way of doing the same thing faster and with less energy, the world would be a better place, right? Even if it was operating in a data center, doing, your search was actually taking place somewhere else. So, I really like this stuff because it demonstrates very nicely, so I get this talk also in sort of schools context, illustrates the power of abstraction, and illustrates about reasoning about algorithms to figure out subtle algorithms, if they're really, really right, reasoning about the space-time trade-off, that you might pay a little bit of space to save a lot of time, and it embodies the idea that you might have a single problem that really has a lot of algorithms for it. Okay, so that's my sort of meta goal, is to sort of keep inspired. So here's more specifically the picture for tonight. So if I want to find the shortest path from A to B, there are various ways I could do it. So one way is the way my mother did it. I'll tell you about this. Then there's a Dijkstra's algorithm, which we'll jump straight to. And that survived for quite a long time, except that there was a bidirectional version. And then there was this really interesting paper called A star. This is still about 1968, quite a while ago. Right. Then there was quite a long period in which really not a lot seemed to happen. It was as if they thought, okay, we're done, right? And then these guys, inspired by this problem, my colleagues at Microsoft and others, started to think maybe we could do better. And they found lots of ways to do better. So I'm going to show you one, I'm going to sketch another, and then beyond that, there's yet more papers that I've discovered since that I don't yet understand. So this is really active today. Even though, this is a year after I was born, is when that paper was first published. It's a really long time scale, okay? Now, here's what we're going to do. How do we find the fastest way from A to B? Well, you just put you put spots on all the intersections, and then you pay people to walk or cycle or drive in cars down all these things. So you figure out how long it takes to get from one to the other, taking account of the traffic or the speed of the roads or how wide the road is and so forth. And these are the lines between them. And then you sort of measure how long it takes to get along all of these lines. And then you can sort of rub out the roads, because if I want to get from here to up to here, I don't really need to think about the wiggles in the roads. I just say, what are the dots? I want to get from this dot to that dot, and I've got to follow these lines. Once you've figured out the shortest path, I think this was the shortest path from here to here actually, then I figure out actually that it goes in this wiggly route, and then I can replace that on the map, and there's doubtless some clever wiggly line drawing algorithms that follow the real lines on the map. Okay, so that's what, of course, what is really happening. And then when you actually show it, you throw away all the spots, like to show it back to your consumer. So it's a underlying this, what the consumer sees, as it were, is a pretty abstract problem. That is a collection of nodes or vertices, and edges that join them, actually bidirectional ones in this case, there are lots of variants, sometimes they're directional, with numbers on them that indicate how costly it is to traverse the graph, and the problem description is, given 2 points A and B, find the shortest path from one to the other. And while I've described this as being something to do with road systems, of course it works for lots of other things, like what's the fastest way to get this job done, the critical path through a PERT chart. And so it's a classic example. If you're illustrating this to anybody else, like tutoring somebody in computer science, say this is abstraction, like this one problem applies to many examples. And then we're going to see lots of algorithms to solve this problem. So it's a sort of powerful point of leverage to identify these abstractions that we can solve in many ways and which then apply in many places. Okay, so this is all, I'm going quickly here because I'm assuming this is all really old hat to you. I'm just setting the scene. Okay, so far? Yeah. All right. So now, what does my mother do? Well, there are lots of ways of solving this problem of getting from A to B. One is simply to get in the car and drive. Right? It's a good randomized algorithm. Every time you come to an intersection, you choose a turning. And eventually, sometime within the lifetime of the universe, perhaps, you will arrive at the destination. You just spot when you get there. And apart from that, so it's I always think that we underplay randomized algorithms. This particular one is a really bad randomized algorithm because it's awfully slow, but it will terminate, right? It will eventually get there in any finite graph, so that's a good property for an algorithm to have, and it's simple, and that's also good. So there's a whole other thing you should do a paper as we love about randomized algorithms, because they're really cool and rather understudied. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to get to something that that actually has some payload. Who's heard of Dijkstra's algorithm for shortest path? Okay, so almost everybody. Who believes that they could say what it does? Okay, a smaller number. So I'm going to tell you what it does. Right, so because it's really very clever, right? It was invented by Dijkstra the year after I was born. So here's how it works. We're going to start at A, we're going to go to B. We're going to divide the vertices into 3 groups: the green ones, the yellow ones, and the red ones. Now the red ones we've not examined at all, so we know nothing about them. The yellow ones are going to constitute our work list. They're the ones we're going to consider doing some work on. And the green ones are sort of passive for the moment. And each of the green and the yellow ones we're going to also associate, as well as the colour, a number. And this number is going to be something like, it's going to say, if it's green n or yellow n, it means there's a path of length n from A, the starting point, to this vertex. Okay? That's the intuition I want to carry, you to carry with you about yellow n or green n. Okay? So I'm going to start off with A being yellow, 0, because there is a 0 length path from A to A for sure, and everything else red. And here's Dijkstra's algorithm. It just says, choose the yellow n vertex with the smallest n, make it green, which puts it in, takes it off the work list, and tell the neighbours. Now I'm going to tell you what that means in a second, but and then I'm just going to do that again and again until B, that's my destination, turns green. Okay? Now I have to tell you what tell the neighbours is before this can make any sense at all. Here's what it means. When I turn a vertex to green, green n, because it was yellow n before, right? I'm turning it to green n. I don't change n when I make the colour switch for the vertex. But what I am going to do is for each neighbour W of V, V is the one I'm working on, I just turned it green. For each neighbour W, I'm going to look at it, right? It's, by neighbour, I mean one arc away, one hop away, down an edge of length K. Okay, now what am I going to do? If W was red, I'm going to turn him yellow. Well, in all cases, I'm going to turn him yellow, actually. Oh, sorry, not in all cases. I'll take that back. If it's red, I'm definitely going to turn him yellow. And I'm going to say his label is n plus k. Why? Because this said there's a path of length n to v, so there's certainly a path of length n plus k to w. Okay? And that was what the n plus k means here. And yellow means I will probably do some more work on it later. Okay, it's in my work list. What about yellow? Yellow n. Well, basically I'm going to turn it into yellow n plus k, but remember, if this guy already has a really short path from A, right, I don't want to increase the number on this node. So only if n plus k is smaller than m, then I'll change his label. So he's going to stay yellow, but I'm going to change him to n plus k, only if that makes his n decrease. Does that make sense? Because I've now found a shorter path to this yellow node. That's the intuition. So these n's, once I put an n on a node, it's only going to go down. Right? I'm never going to increase it. That's an important intuition. Because once I found a path of length n to a vertex, a path of length n from A to the vertex, then I might find shorter paths, but I'd never want to give up on the one I've got. Oh. And finally, if it's green, well, all I said about green was that it's passive. Maybe n is not yet the shortest path. It turns out that it is for Dijkstra, but in general it's not going to be. So if n plus k is shorter, then I again can reduce it. Okay? And that's it. That's what tell the neighbours means. So it's a sort of one-step propagation. It says, I'm turning V green, let me take the immediate neighbours and drop their numbers if necessary and turn them all yellow. Oh, that's right. If this guy's green, I turn him back to yellow if I've shrunk his number, so that I look at him again so he can shrink his neighbours and so forth. But if this condition didn't hold, he will stay green. That's fine. Okay? So far so good? That's it. That's Dijkstra's algorithm. Now, let's just see it working. Is there any questions so far? Do I think you understand? Yes?
This gives you an estimate of the shortest distance to a node, but then how do you turn that into a path to get to the node that you're
Oh, well, so if we had a complete path, or so if we found B, if we got to this point, when B is green, right, then we would know, B would say, oh, there's a path of length 42 to B, right? And then you would say, I wonder which node of the nodes that arrive at B is the previous one, right? You could say, oh, so you look at their labels, right, and one of them at least will say, let's say it's of length 4, he'll say 38, right? With he's sort of 4 less than B. So you can find your way back.
But then how do you, if you've got 5 neighbours of B, how do you find which one is the actual one that is on the path?
Well, it doesn't matter. If there were several, so let me see. So I've got B, and he's got, let's say, 45 on him. Right, so we know that there is a path of length 45. And then some way connected to here is a node, let's say this is 2. And this says 43, and this says 7. And this guy says 38. Well now, the shortest path could go through either of these two actually, because if you go this way, well there's a path of 43 and that will give me a 45, and if I go this way there's a path of, see what I mean? So it actually doesn't matter. You can always find by this. Once you know the numbers, you're golden. Okay?
So,
good question. Yeah.
So with the turning green back into yellow,
yeah.
So that can only happen if the vertices can have negative weights, right?
No, green back into yellow. This can happen because he got to be green because I somehow found a node by some path and some rather long path, right? So he got a big green number, right? So now he's passive. But then I found some shorter way.
But we only turned the lowest number to green, right? So it could never actually happen.
True. In Dijkstra's algorithm, this never happens. In Dijkstra's algorithm. But I'm putting it this way because if it did happen, this is what we want to do, and in future versions of the algorithm, we will want this to happen.
But if that does happen, then doesn't that mean we'll have to stop if everything becomes green? Because then you could always turn it back into yellow.
So you can worry about, if this can happen, now I think of green from yellow, and how do I know I've really got the shortest path? We're going to come to all of that, because it's not obvious you get the right answer, right? So we have to reason about, does this algorithm even terminate, and does it give the right answer when it terminates? And we're going to talk about that. Yeah. So it's absolutely not obvious that this algorithm works. That's maybe the point. So sometimes somebody tells you the algorithm, of course, yeah, I understand that, right? Here you think, maybe, and we're going to prove it. Now, so let's just execute it first, get an intuition for how it works. So we start with 0, well, they're all red, except this guy is yellow. We're going to turn him green and choose one of these guys, one yellow node, we're going to turn him green and tell the neighbours. What did tell the neighbours mean? It meant take a red node and make it 0 plus k, 0 plus 10, 10, 0 plus 15, 15. Now we're going to pick one of these nodes, let's say randomly this one, any yellow node will do. Or sorry, the yellow node with smallest n. 15 and 10, pick 10, right? So now we're going to pick him with smallest n, and we're going to turn him green and tell his neighbours. To tell his neighbours, what does that mean? We're going to turn these two yellow, and what numbers are we're going to put in both of these? 11, right? Because we just add 1 to our 10, so he's 11, right? So now we pick the smallest, node with smallest, yellow node with smallest n. Either of these 11s will do, but let's pick this one. So we're going to turn his neighbours we're going to now tell his neighbours. He's got lots of neighbours, right? He's got a green one over here. I didn't mention that before. So he goes back here. Would 11 plus 1, 12? That wouldn't reduce his number, so we don't change him. This guy, 11 plus 4 makes 15, so we don't touch him. 11 plus 3 makes 14, yeah, so we're going to make him go to 14, right? So how's it going? Okay, so now the smallest yellow node, that's this chap. So we expand him, he tells his neighbours, oh, so we've got to make him 15. Smallest one is this 14. So we add 8 to this and make him 22. Notice this is the destination, that's B. So B has turned yellow now, but it may or may not be the shortest path. He's not green yet. So what happens now? He's the smallest guy, this 15. So we turn him yellow and add 8 to get 23. And now we're going to turn, what are we going to do? Oh, now he's the smallest one, right? He's the smallest yellow node. B is the smallest yellow, so we can turn him green. And we've won, right? The shortest path of 22. That's how the algorithm works. Okay. Well, so this is your question, right? It kind of worked in this example, but does it work in every example? Every single example? And how would you know for sure? Well, let's see, the various things we might ask about this. One is, let's see, does it even terminate? Let's see, can you make a termination argument? Could this go on forever? Here it is. Anybody care to try to explain to a random person why this couldn't go on forever? Yeah.
Because number of green nodes increases, and if we don't turn them yellow again, we will run out of green nodes.
Right. So at the moment, in every step, a red node becomes yellow. A yellow node might stay yellow, so maybe we're not making progress there. But a green, and as you say, let's say this doesn't happen. In fact, we can prove for Dijkstra it doesn't happen. So yellows can still become yellows. So, but in every step I turn one, that's right, so in every step I turn one yellow node green, and I never turn a green node back to yellow. We still have to prove why that can't happen. So therefore we will turn it. That's a good argument. Yeah. Why don't we turn a yellow node back? Why don't we ever turn a green node back? Because we always pick the lowest end. How could we possibly turn this node was yellow, right? And if this node was previously yellow as well, then when we turn this one green, we would have picked this one. It was going to get to be. Oh, did I get this right? Sorry, yes. I think if you think about it for too long, I'm not going to pause here because I've got too much else I want to say. But I think the argument that says yellow nodes, green nodes don't turn yellow is pretty straightforward. Okay. So then the termination algorithm is very easy. Yeah. Okay. So I'm perhaps making a mistake of thinking that was very easy. It's not entirely obvious because I was focusing my attention on the harder question of how do we know that you get the shortest path? Because after all, when we finish all of this game, we have not even explored all the nodes. Oh, actually, in this particular example, we have looked at everything. But it's easy to see that there are examples where there are some nodes you do not look at all, right? And yet, we terminate. We terminate as soon as B becomes green. There are certainly still yellow nodes, and when we finish, here we are, this is green. There are some yellow nodes unprocessed, but we know somehow that they're not going to be relevant. How do we know that?
Explore all the parts.
It's not what? In this case, it's because in 23 plus 8 that will be bigger, right? But how do we know that will always be true? Yeah.
They are the maximum of all
the maximum?
The maximum of all the nodes. It's the maximum of all the nodes.
The maximum of all the nodes is what?
23.
The maximum of, well, in this particular example, this is the biggest number here, 22 here, so we're not going to, there is a 23 path to here, but we're not going to go through there to find a shorter path to B, definitely. But how can we be sure that was true for every road network in the whole of Europe?
We explore all the paths that are shorter than 22.
We've somehow explored all the paths that are shorter than 23. So yeah.
We're exploring every path that doesn't involve a cycle to get to that.
Well, no, we're not even exploring every path that doesn't involve a cycle. You'll find that if you do this on big maps, you can explore from A to B and there are paths that there are no cycles involved that are just off to the side. that never get looked at.
Making the next step would be more expensive than the solution we found?
Taking the next step would be more expensive than the solution, right? That's what we want to kind of formalize. So what I want to do in one slide is to give you an argument that I think you could, convince your daughter that this always works. And it's not, it turns out, I scoured the literature for this. It's not easy to find. If you Google around for proofs of Dijkstra's algorithm, they're not that easy to find. Certainly for ACE, but this proof I chose because a proof of Dijkstra's algorithm, they're not too hard to find. But this proof scales to work for A star as well, which I'm about to show you, and those proofs are thinner on the ground. So I boiled this proof down to the simplest essence I could. So let's see if I can convince you. Okay, so now you really have to pay attention. You ready? So the question is, I'm going to stop when B turns green. So the question is, could B turn green prematurely? That is, before I've looked at enough nodes, and when it does turn green, does it have the right number in it? And I'm going to try to demonstrate that could not be the case. Right? I'll do it like this. Imagine that you knew the optimal path from A to B. That is the shortest path from A to B. I've just drawn it here. Right? The computer doesn't know that, but we kind of, in our minds, do know it. Now, at some stage in the algorithm, when B is, we're thinking about whether B might turn green. At some stage in the algorithm, there are going to be some green nodes. A will definitely be green because it was the yellow node to start with, and we turned it green, right? It's the very first step, right? With 0 in it. So there's some sequence of green nodes. I mean, clearly, perhaps of length 1, but maybe longer. There's some sequence of green nodes after which I get to a yellow or perhaps a red. Actually, green nodes are always attached to yellow nodes only, or green nodes. They're never attached to red nodes. I think that's right. Yes, because when I turn it green, I flip the red off. So at some point on a path, if I start at A and follow this optimal path, the shortest path, I will go green, 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 green. At some point, I will get to yellow. If I didn't, green, 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 all the way to the end, then I would have got to my destination. Okay, at some point, I'm going to get to yellow. Now, I want to claim two things. The first is that even for yellow nodes, for every yellow node, and actually indeed every green node, if it says yellow K, there is a K path, not necessarily the shortest, but the existent, this guy says there is a path of length 15 to this node. Possibly not the shortest path, but there is a path of length 15. That's what yellow K means. There is a K path. From A to B, yes. So here, since this guy has K, I know there is a path of length K, a path of length K that gets to B. All right? I know that for sure. Are you convinced of that? Now, going back to this thing, I've got my initial list. Now here's a claim. All of these green nodes have the correct end. By correct end, I mean the shortest path from A to the node. So this guy says 0, this guy, the shortest path is 7, the shortest path is 10, the shortest path is 11. They will have the correct number. Why will these initial sequence of green nodes, however long it is, maybe only of length 1, maybe longer, why do we know that they all must have the correct end, the shortest path from A to that vertex? Yeah.
Because if there would have been another one, we would have looked at that first, and that would have been a big one. Yeah, right. So so imagine when I turned this green, when I turned it green, I told this guy, I made sure that this guy's number was, when I turned this green, I made sure that this guy's number was no more than 7. When I turned this guy green, I made this guy's number no more than 10. When I turned this guy green, I made sure that his number was no more than 11. Okay? So, although, remember, this is a thought experiment, if we are thinking about the optimal path, we do know that on the optimal path, all these numbers up to here are correct. With me so far? After this point, who knows? Okay, so now, the question before us is, will Dijkstra's algorithm choose this guy, or this guy? Or maybe something else. If he could possibly choose this guy, we're in trouble. Right? So I want to make sure that he is always going to choose this guy over this guy. Or something else. He mustn't choose B, because then B would turn green and we'd be dead. How do we know he's going to choose this? Well, since all of these guys have the correct number, when we turned him green,
the one hop away from this green guy, he also has the correct number. The shortest path to him is 15. This chap we don't know. These chaps we don't know. This chap definitely 15. Yes? Because when we turned him green, we made sure that his number was no more than 15. And since 15 is the shortest path, it'll be 15. Okay. Now, so we know that, but so that's the shortest path from A to B. But we have some distance left to go. So the shortest path from A to B is surely less than this, unless B is B. Right? So we know that 15 must be shorter than, must be smaller than, the shortest path all the way to B. Stands to reason. Here we are, we got this far, the shortest path, we've got 15 steps, and we've got more to go. So 15 is shorter than the shortest path to all the way to B. But K is bigger than the shortest path all the way to B. Because there is a path from A to B of length K, and the shortest path, we can't get shorter than that. Right? So K is bigger than the shortest path, this is smaller than the shortest path, so I'm sure to choose him over him. Alright? So what that tells us is I can't possibly turn the destination green until I have turned every vertex on the optimal path green. And if I have turned every vertex on the optimal path green, then in that final step, right, when I turn this guy green for the last time, I will turn him yellow with the correct distance. Are you convinced? Don't you think that's a nice argument? I don't have to talk much about induction. It's just a, you know? Yeah. So this is a good moment to pause because it's a, something intellectually interesting has happened in this book. For me, this is what computer science is about. It says, I can write this code, and I know nobody will submit a bug report because the algorithm. I might have implemented it wrong, but yeah. Okay. Good. That's it. So, okay. So far so good. Except that it does work, but it doesn't work very well. It explores far too many roads. Here is a map of the Pacific Northwest. Which is, so this is sort of Seattle, and this is somewhere down in the middle of the country of the United States. And in going from here to here, Dijkstra explored all of these roads down here. And what a ridiculous thing to do, right? Why would you even think of exploring roads down here? I'm going to explain why it's not as stupid as it looks, but nevertheless it is stupid. Okay, so that's bad. Okay, so what are we going to do? One simple idea is to start, maybe we could work from both ends at once, right? So sort of work out from here and backwards from here. That's called bidirectional Dijkstra. It's a fairly simple extension, and you get this. You have to be even more careful with your implementation. It's not really quite a simple program. But you still explore vastly more roads than any rational human being would take. If I gave you a map, I want to go from here to here, you would not get the map out for this part of the country. Right? You just wouldn't. Or something is wrong. Okay. So, this is where we got to. Dijkstra died in 2002, sadly. It's just an amazing computer scientist. He had lots of very intellectually interesting ideas. This was just one of them. So we're sort of up to here in our story. Great man. I got to meet him too. He was at a workshop in Newcastle, strangely enough. Okay, so now I'm going to step back a bit and say, okay, so rather than just do Dijkstra, I want to show you a slight generalization of Dijkstra that does what looks like something worse, but we can soup it up to do something better. So here, as a reminder, is Dijkstra's algorithm, right? And the bit I've circled here is look for the vertex with the smallest ends. What we're going to do is, everything about the algorithms I'm going to show you is going to be the same, except my criterion for which element of the work list to pick is going to change. Here I'm picking the one with smallest end. That's what Dijkstra does. Now, the generalization works like this. This is a super general version. This is the other end of the spectrum, which says instead of picking the version with smallest end, pick any work list node. Any of them at all, right? And then, as before, we make it green and we tell the neighbours. But now, because we didn't pick the one with the smallest end, Now we could get some green nodes turning back into yellow ones. So now this thing does happen. And the other thing is that when we get to B, so when a node turns green in Dijkstra's algorithm, we know that its n is final, right? Since we don't turn it back to yellow, we have no further opportunity to reduce its number. So you can see from our algorithm so far, when it turns green, if it stays green, the n you get for a green node, that's the final version, right? With this algorithm, if you think about it for a little bit, you'll find that you could quickly draw some graphs that show you can pick a yellow node, you can turn something green, and then you find another route, and you go back and say that said green, but actually it's smaller. I can find a faster route to the same place because of the n. So the stopping condition has to be more complicated. The stopping condition here is when B is green and there are no yellow nodes that have a shorter path. Right? Somebody mentioned that, right? Do you remember somebody said, oh, but look, that yellow node is 23, so you couldn't possibly find a faster route to the destination. That's what's going on here. And then this method will work, right? So this is worse in the sense that it looks as if nodes could go from, let's see, do I say this? Nodes can turn from yellow to green. So from green back to yellow, that's bad. So I might visit nodes more than once, that sounds inefficient. And also, my stopping condition is more complicated, that doesn't sound so good, but it gives us some more wiggle room. Right? It gives us more wiggle room because it says, oh, I don't have to choose Dijkstra's choice, and we're going to have better choices. But this is called the scanning method. It's a sort of generic, it covers a range of algorithms. And I'm going to explore the range by, instead of choosing truly any randomly, I'm going to make a different strategic choice, not Dijkstra's choice, but a more cunning one. But the tell the neighbours thing is unchanged. So the only thing that's changed is my choice of. So the same, what is it? The same. The algorithm wasn't predicated on choosing the smallest one. Actually, with a very small tweak, it works just fine in terms of correctness, not necessarily efficiency, for other choices in the end. Okay. So that's the. Okay. Now, but you might wonder. Look. Does this algorithm even terminate? After all, nodes are going from green to yellow, and yellow to green, and green to yellow, and yellow to green. Could that go on forever? I think, can you make an argument that says that couldn't possibly go on forever? The what? None of which change? Oh, the argument to yellow. That's right, the number. That's right, the numbers on the nodes, I only go from green to yellow if the number decreases. In fact, in every step, numbers decrease, right? So you may visit nodes many times, but in each stage, every node has a number that decreases. So we're going, right? Or else the node goes from yellow to green. So that's a good termination argument. It may take longer, because you may visit nodes n times rather than just once, but it will terminate. It's a little bit less obvious to see why it terminates with the shortest path. And I'm not going to do that. You can adapt the one I showed you, but I want to show you a star, and show you its algorithm more fun. Okay? But this is actually a correct algorithm. It's just a bit inefficient if you randomly choose. But the nice thing is that once you know that it'll work if you randomly choose, then for any choice, if I then go from this, and instead of choosing any random yellow vertex, I just choose a particular one somehow, then I know that it's all work. Okay. Now, I've said this already. Dijkstra has two advantages over this, which is that he visits any vertex once, and he stops when B becomes green, rather than this more complicated stopping condition here. Okay, so that's the general setup. Now, let's see. Why did Dijkstra behave badly? Right? Why was he really not doing very well? And it's because he does ink blotting, right? Remember, he chooses the yellow node that is closest to, not the destination, but the starting point, right? So imagine if I can ink blot, we start here, the green nodes are the one we've done, we've got a sort of yellow boundary. We choose the yellow node that's closest to the starting point and look outwards from there. So I'm driving from London to Birmingham, but I ink blot my way out and I start going towards Croydon, and then, towards Brighton. Why would I do that? Because I choose the closest to N. Right? What a stupid thing to do. I'm going completely the opposite direction than the one I'm trying to go in. But that's what Dijkstra's done. He ink blots his way out, right? Like this. Make sense? That's why things don't work very well. Of course, if you ink blot from two directions at once, then the blots meet each other more quickly. That's good. But the basic idea is stupid. Right? that he ignored. That's obviously wrong. But why is it not completely stupid? And it's because this. Supposing I was here, and I ink blotted my way out, and then here it turned out there was a space warp that could instantaneously take me over here. Now it would make sense, instead of laboriously going down here, to go out this way, zoom, right, and then, or maybe this space warp took me all the way to the destination. There's no way to tell for sure, right? This is just a graph with weights on the vertices. So I sort of have to go towards Brighton just in case there is an incredibly fast motorway from Brighton to London. Right? But there isn't. So, the question is, how could we exploit our knowledge of how fast vehicles could travel, right, to speed up this search? Really dramatic, and it's really dramatically bad, this. Look at the roads. Every little neighbourhood in little hamlets down here, it's ridiculous, right? So how could we use our domain knowledge to fix that in a way that wasn't totally specific to, you know, maps, right? But we still like some level of abstraction. That was now we get to something that Dijkstra, that these guys, what's his name? I forget the A-star guy's names. Oh, Nilsson and co. Thought of. They were trying to do route planning for a robot. So they had a robot and it was trying to find its way around mazes and things. So that was their problem, and they invented an algorithm called A-star. So here's the difference between A-star and Dijkstra. Dijkstra's algorithm, we've seen it lots of times. Choose the yellow node with the smallest n. That is the one closest to the beginning, which, as we've been discussing, is not a good idea. So what they did instead is they said, choose the yellow vertex with the smallest n plus L. What's this L thing? L is a lower bound on the distance from V to the destination. A lower bound. Right, so that says, if I'm thinking about a place that a yellow node I might choose, then I think, let's say it's in Milton Keynes. What's a lower bound on the distance between Milton Keynes and Birmingham? Maybe, the fastest motorway possible. Right? And then I say, oh, I could go to Croydon. Should I choose that node? What's a lower bound on the distance from Croydon to Birmingham? Actually, there is we can make a sensible lower bound. Maybe draw a straight line and the fastest possible car. That would do as my lower bound to begin with. Okay? So, in real problems, it is possible to have lower bounds for the bit we have not yet explored, for the distance from the node I'm looking at, V, to the destination, which is the distance from V to B, a lower bound of that. Okay? So this is domain knowledge. I mean, to do with maps, and in a different application it would be different. But so these A-star guys said, if we have this function L, then we could do better. All right? Now, how can we do better? Well, first of all, just note that if L of V, the lower bound, is 0, well, that's surely a lower bound. You can't go faster than instantaneously. So if you choose L of V to 0, what do you get? Dijkstra, right? So Dijkstra is a sort of extremum of this algorithm with a particularly simple lower bound. Right? It's a special case. So this is a sort of superset of Dijkstra that just does something more. Right, so I'm going to tell you what L is, but let me just first of all point out, tell the neighbours, no change. Nodes can still turn from green back to yellow, however, right? Unlike Dijkstra. But nevertheless, the algorithm is the only change is this. But notice also, I've gone back to saying stop when B becomes green. That was good. All right? I don't have to do that more complicated stopping condition. Okay. So, let's see. Let's just see how this goes. Supposing I want to go from London to Troon. Troon is a town near Glasgow where I used to live. And supposing I've already ink-blotted, I've already explored, some direction. I've already explored as far as Birmingham and Brighton. And I've sort of, I've done some, they're yellow. So I know that there is a path of length 100 to Brighton, I know there is a path of length 120 to Birmingham. Okay. Now what? Should I explore more around Birmingham or more around Brighton? Well, Dijkstra would say, oh, Brighton looks good to me. Right? He's only 100 from London, so better explore from there, right? Birmingham looks good to me. You don't think it looks good to you? Right? Which map would you get out? And why is that? Because if I look at the Crowfly's estimate, it's 650 miles from Brighton to Troon, only 400 from Birmingham. So 120 plus 400 makes 520. 100 plus 650, 750. Oh, let's do Birmingham. That's what A star says, okay? That's the idea. Pretty simple, actually. And kind of intuitively you could see why, because he's saying, you know, explore the one that is, for which the best estimate we have of the total distance is minimal. All right? That's a good intuition. You know, that you don't know for sure, but prioritize yellow nodes that appear to be, you know, on the route that is in total shortest, not just shortest so far, which is what blind is, the shortest so far. This guy looks like the shortest overall. Okay? That's the intuition. Anchor that. Yeah.
So how do I, without exploring all the different nodes, know as the crow flies? Like,
oh,
like,
how do I know?
like,
So I do need. So how do I get this? So I definitely don't use the nodes at all. So I have to assume that there's some domain knowledge, right? So if you're the map person, you just draw the straight line on the map and measure it. You know the geographical positions of these places, right? You're the map person.
Right, so do, like in the map case, I would annotate my nodes with like X, Y coordinates.
That's right, yes. So for the crow flies distance, we're going to annotate them in a different way very shortly. Yeah. So it is information that is strictly not part of the original graph, right? Because the original graph just didn't have enough information because it could have had one of those wormholes through space. This is the extra information that's telling us where those wormholes could possibly be. Yeah. So it's strictly extra storage, strictly extra knowledge that you're putting in. Yeah. Okay. So far so good? All right, now, we have to wonder whether this gives the correct answer. And it turns out that it only gives the correct answer if the lower bound estimate is sensible. And by sensible, I mean the following. Firstly, the lower bound from, how long does it take to get from B to B? 0. So L of B should be 0. That's the lower bound from B to B. Now, and also it should respect the triangle inequality. And what does that mean? That means that if I got from V to B, the distance from V to B that L tells me, had better be smaller than, for every other node W, if I've got L of W, and V is directly connected to W, if I add on this bit and then estimate this, it should be smaller than or equal to this. Greater than or equal to this, sorry. The direct path should be shorter. That's called the triangle inequality. And you can see that a good lower bound estimate should respect that, right, just common sense. And this is a good way of formalizing common sense. The crow flies distance certainly has that property. Okay? So that's why I say L is a sensible lower bound thing. And it turns out that if it respects the triangle inequality, then it also has the property that it's, the lower bound is less than the shortest path. Okay, so it really is a lower bound for the actual distance along the roads. Right? And that's what we wanted to do. So this property is super important. In fact, that's really all you need is to know this. Okay? All right. Fine. So now I'm going to replay the argument about why. So A star is just amazing. Like, how can it possibly be sure to give the right answer just when B turns green, right? Here. That was amazing. We've explored many fewer paths, as you will see. Here's the same argument as I gave you for Dijkstra. I shan't replay it at the same length, but the very same argument works. Could B turn green prematurely? Well, consider the optimal path, and this is K. There is a K path from B, that must be bigger than the shortest path, right? Because the shortest path, well, because K is a path and there's no path is shorter than the shortest path. The initial green nodes all have the correct n, exactly the same reasoning as before. So V has the correct n, and now the only difference in the argument is that V's n plus the lower bound of V must be shorter than the shortest path from A to B. Why? Well, because the distance from A to V is, that is n. N is the distance from A to V. The shorter, and the distance from V to B, it must be, L is a lower bound from that. So surely, it is shorter than the shortest path. Okay? On the other hand, K, as you remember, K is bigger than the shortest path. This is shorter than the smallest path, so again, we can be sure that we'll choose this one before this one, and that's it. So I really like it that the same argument works. This argument is the one that's given in the A star paper, which is not the one I cited in the abstract. I cited the sort of later one, but it's one of the citations of the paper that I gave you in the abstract. It's the original A star paper, which is only 8 pages long, and quite now, you know, any of you could read it easily. It's not heavy duty. It's really nicely written. Okay. So this is the argument. I'm not belaboring it, but it's the same argument as for Dijkstra. It still proves that A star finds the shortest path. Sadly, however, it still does not work well. It works better than Dijkstra, but still not well. And why? Because motorways are a bit like spacewalks, right? How do you know a lower bound for the distance between Birmingham and Scotland and Troon? Well, you might have special knowledge, but the simplest thing to do is to say, what's the fastest car on the fastest road, right? So once you have motorways, you sort of have to assume that you know, the crow flying at the fastest motorway speed is what you're after, right? And so that means that the crow fly's distance that we have to do is rather small, right? The lower bounds are rather small. We want big lower bounds, right? We got a lower bound of 0 is back to Dijkstra. We want a bigger lower bound, and motorways or very fast roads shrink that lower bound, so it's not really good. So even one, you know, so that's what we do. Now these are the chaps: Hart, Raphael, Nilsson. Amazing, amazing piece of ingenious, very nice ingenious algorithm. What we want to do is to have better lower bounds than Euclidean distance crow flies. So now we're moving on to 2005 or so. So we're into the current millennium now. We've hopped over this quite long gap, you know, 1968, is this 1968? So 30 years, nothing much happened, and now we're going to hop over to what happened in the early 2000s when people started doing seriously big graphs for serious route planning on handheld computers. So the picture I want to give you is that there's this lower bound thing, right, L of V. So L of V is sort of a lower bound for the distance from V to the destination B. If the lower bound is 0, which is certainly definitely a lower bound, we get Dijkstra. The largest possible value that L of V could have would be the exact distance from V to B. If we were omniscient and knew the precise distance from V to B, what would happen? So if we made L of V somehow omnisciently be the exact right distance, we would always pick exactly the right node. We would look at exactly one node all the way. That's what would happen if we were clever enough to go right up to this. There's a sort of slider here. This is really bad, better, 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 better. This is impossible because we don't know the exact distance. This is what we're trying to figure out, right? Okay, so what can we do? So Dijkstra here is ink blotting. He does this, ink blots his way. Now, if we have a better lower bound, we get a sort of more biased thing, right? Because he's dragging towards B. Right? And he ink blots his way in a more cleverly biased way by having L of V up here. If, on the other hand, L of V was right up here, we'd zoom straight right down the shortest path. So I want you to have the feeling of this continuum of algorithms driven by the goodness of L of V, right? And Euclidean distance along the fastest motorway is a possible one, but not a very good one. And now I'm going to show you a very simple and very clever idea that Andrew Goldberg and his colleagues invented that gives much better results. Are you ready?
Yes.
It's amazing. It's called landmarks. So here's the idea. Pick a few landmarks, sort of around the edge of your map. Right? Pre-compute exact distances from every node to the landmark. So let's say the landmark is Glasgow. Then for every intersection in Britain, indeed in Europe, I'm going to compute an exact distance to Glasgow, and I'm going to record that for posterity. So I'm going to, for every node, remember I've got its geographical location and a few other things, I'm just going to add one number, the distance to Glasgow. Alright? That's not so much extra storage, it's a few megabytes or, a few tens of megabytes, it's nothing much, fits on a tiny corner of a USB stick. So I'm going to I'm going to do this once. So once in the history of the universe, doesn't take very long, right? So it's a lot of work to compute all these things, but once it's done, it's done. Now, so supposing I know that, now, to compute a lower bound for the distance from Brighton to Troon, what can I do? Well, beg pardon?
you sum the two paths to one landmark?
Yes, well, right, yes, so if I knew that, so I know the exact distance from Brighton to Glasgow, and I know the exact distance from Brighton to Troon, so at least, let's see, I want a lower bound. So I don't want to add them, because there might be a shorter way. If Troon was sort of on the way to Glasgow, then the distance might be less than 653, right? But even if Troon was exactly on the way, Troon could not possibly be closer than, I should have 647, right? It couldn't be less than 16 miles less. All right? So isn't that good, right? So I pre-computed it. And this, by the way, is taking account of all the intersections and the motorways and traffic jams, who knows what, all of stuff is taking account of in this number and this number. And now I've got a lower bound on the way to Troon. Okay?
Traffic jams are dynamic.
Big one?
Traffic jams are
Traffic's a dynamic, very good point. So if you really want to take account of traffic jams, you would have to compute these exact shortest paths on a regular basis. So I'm not going to deal with that at all. And probably the guys at Google have thought quite hard about that. But I'm going to and Microsoft. Andrew Goldberg, it does work for Microsoft. So, now, let's see. This all rather relies on the fact that Troon is near Glasgow, right? If Troon was in the opposite direction, it wouldn't help much. Right? So it's quite helpful to have several landmarks, a dozen or so, pre-compute them all. And then we notice just what I said, that if the landmark is the other side of the destination, so here's the landmark, here's where I am. So if it's the other side of the destination, then my lower bound is quite a good one. But if it's nowhere near the destination, that's not the lower bound is still a lower bound, but it's not a good one. So, how can we always have a landmark that's beyond the destination? Well, a simple way is to choose several of them, right? So if I have lots of landmarks, like say 10, around the edge of my map, then there's always going to be one of them that is beyond the destination, sort of, roughly. It doesn't have to be exact, somewhat beyond. And the point is that if I have a lower bound that's driven from one landmark and a lower bound that's driven from a second landmark, they're all lower bounds. So I can take the maximum of them. Remember, I want the largest lower bound. So I take the maximum of all these lower bounds. And I'm good, and that's amazing. And so if it's provided one of them is in a good place, we're happy, right? And that's really it. Don't you think that was a simple idea? Well, that means I need to compute, if I got 10 landmarks, I need 10 numbers for every student intersection in Europe. But it makes an amazing difference. This is Dijkstra, bidirectional Dijkstra. This is the thing with landmarks. The landmarks are the spots. I don't know why some are yellow and some are red. But look at how few, and this is a bidirectional version of this A-star with landmarks algorithm. Look how many fewer nodes are explored. Nothing down here, nothing up here. Just transformationally different. Don't you think that's amazing? And that one simple, so space-time trade-off, we take a little bit of space, but we gain an awful lot of time. So how's it good? Okay, so there's some numbers to it that goes from, running time goes from a third of a second, or 340 milliseconds to 12 milliseconds. If you manage to optimize your programs by that factor, you would be happy, right? Very happy. That's a big number. And this is not done by clever engineering of the inner loops. This is done by having a better algorithm. Okay, so here we go. Now, can we do better still? So I'm going to, in the last few minutes, so we started at 10 past, right?
Yes.
So can I just give you 10? Oh, sorry, my whole life's been building up to this point. It didn't stop there. This is 2002, so I'm going to show you one idea very quickly. So I won't do this in detail because I barely understand it myself. But I want to give you an idea of what people are trying to do now. So here's a map in which here's your starting point, here's your finishing point, and it turns out this is the Bay Area, and there's this little island here, which is implausibly enough actually called Treasure Island. This is a real place. I didn't make it up. Now, of course, I could explore, when doing routes from A to B, I could explore Treasure Island, but you would not sensibly do that. Because your intuition is that Treasure Island is not really on the way to anywhere, is it? Right? It's only on the way to itself. How could we incorporate that idea, right? no vertex in Treasure Island is sort of on the way to anywhere distant. What might that mean? So, that doesn't mean, it might be on the way between somewhere close, right? If this was your A and this was your B, that is on the way between them. So it's not that it's not on the way to anywhere, it's just not on the way of distant places, right? And on the way means on the shortest path. So how might I express that more formally? Well, Andrew and his colleagues, I'm not sure whether it was originally, had invented this idea of reach. So the reach of a vertex is, intuitively, it's big if V is on the way, that is on the shortest path, between distant places, and the reach of V is small if V is only on the way between nearby places. All right? So you could put it like this. The reach of it is the maximum of take any two vertices, find the shortest path between them, and find all the shortest path at which V is on. So if V is on the shortest path between A and B, right? Now look for the shortest path from V to A and from V to B. That is to see if the endpoints are near V. And the largest one, that's the reach, right? That says the most distant one. So I'm on the way between. You said that's its reach. That's the intuition. I'm on the way between far away places. So at least one of A and B is far away. That's what reach is. Now, computing the reach of V, you do that once and for all, and it's expensive. It's really expensive. But if you knew the reach of V, then you could modify our same scanning algorithm again. When by choosing a yellow vertex, instead of choosing it with the smallest n plus L of V, we filter out all of those for which the reach of V, remember that reach says, if the reach of V is smaller than n, that means that no shortest path involving V can be as distant as n. But we know that we're going from a place that's n away, so V can't be on the shortest path. And similarly, if his reach of V is smaller than L of the lower bound here, we can't be on the shortest path. So we can filter out all of those guys and just not look at them. So again, pre-compute reach, and then use it to filter out this, and there you are. And this makes a big difference too. Here is the same thing. This is without reach, and this is with reach. Look, it's sort of, you barely look at anything. These little green spots are from one direction, and the blue spots are the bidirectional thing from the other direction. It's looking at incredibly few vertices. It's like amazing. There's another piece in here. There's a sort of shortcut business in here that I haven't talked about. So, I think I should wrap up. I just want to point. We've gone from 340 milliseconds now to 0.73 milliseconds by a bit of pre-computation and algorithmic cleverness. That is a huge one. Okay. And that's not all, right? So since these guys wrote the paper, and this is incidentally the paper that not the reach part, but the landmark stuff, was the paper that I put in the link. Here it is. It's quite a nice paper. I think you could enjoy reading it. There's this other thing about contraction hierarchies that is since then, and there's more papers in 2011, 2012. This stuff is still burgeoning, amazingly, even though it's a 60-year-old problem. I think that's incredible. We're still finding ways of making this faster, a lot faster. So here's my sort of wrap up, is just to say, look, here's an algorithm that's kind of very simple to describe what the problem is that we're trying to solve. The algorithms themselves, certainly their initial versions, are not that complicated. The argument that the algorithms work is definitely an intellectual challenge. It's not just obvious, right? The amount of win that you get by taking a clever algorithm is enormous, not just modest. The key to getting hold of all of this, if you thought of it in terms of the original route map, your head would explode. The key to doing all this is abstraction. So this is computer science, just the most amazing subject. Any other questions or observations? Maybe some of you have cunning algorithms that you use daily.
Has there been any research on how humans do that? So if you've got like a London cabbie, it sounds like the landmark.
Oh, how do humans do this? That's a good question, yes. How does a cabbie find the shortest path?
Yeah.
I don't know. And so they have medically expanded hippocampuses, don't they? They've examined hippocampus and discovered bits of their brain sort of swollen somehow. Yeah. But it's an interesting question. I don't know. It would be also interesting to give humans some sort of awkward maps and see how well they did. Because I suspect that the heuristics we're used to about, distance, like, even if you look at an ordinary map, you don't really know how much faster the red road is than the little white road. You sort of guess, don't you? But I suspect that computers probably do quite a lot better than people, actually, because they know some of that, yeah.
I was thinking about the problem with traffic and how it's dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
And it must make the weights and the distances of the edges change.
Yes.
So there has to be a parallel family of algorithms that are
deal with dynamic, yes. Yeah, so the question is, what happens if the weights on the edges change, and which happens to traffic?
They must take the difference between the original value and the current value, and somehow avoid computing the whole distance, just compute the difference.
They must be doing something, and I don't know of any academic. I mean, this is not my area, right? So I'm a complete amateur at this. I just read it up for you, but also because I met Andrew. But you would think there would be academic papers about that, but it turns out that sometimes some of this work is done only in the Googles and Microsofts of this world, right? And it's hidden away. We should extract it out and publish it.
I've heard of it being done in a certain ride-sharing company.
Certain ride-share? Uber must do all this, of course, yes. So, but I wish that they'd published their algorithms.
But they make a lot of money by having it.
Well, they think they make the money out of that. I bet they really make the money out of lots of other things. I really doubt. Usually, the wonderful thing about computer science is it's like a fractal. It's wherever you dig, there's more excitement, more depth, more interest. And if you publish something that says, here's my algorithm, actually, if somebody tries to reproduce that, there's still streets behind you because you spent 3 years engineering it, and you have thought of 3 improvements to it since then. So typically, I think companies are more, worried about their intellectual property than they should be. And Microsoft, I've worked for Microsoft for 20 years now. When I first worked for Microsoft, they were very anxious about open source. And now, lots of Microsoft, core products are open source. So I think, the message is getting through. Right. Yes?
When I do searches like this on Google, what often happens is that it shows me 2 or 3 different routes, like from Brighton to Birmingham, go east or west around London, which are very far apart and maybe only 5 minutes difference. How would you incorporate this?
Oh, good question. So yes, so Google often shows you several routes which you might want to choose because you have, you want to go past your sister's law on the way, and they don't differ very much. So it would show you maybe. I wonder if it does it. I can't think how. I don't really know how it does that. I could imagine doing it by saying, okay, so let's knock out that one, somehow disqualify it. What's the next best one? But you might find one that was only a tiny bit different. How to make sure that it's markedly different? I don't really know. It's another very interesting question. Yeah, good. Somebody at the back.
I was saying, it was a great talk.
Yeah, thank you.
Do these algorithms have trouble with things like mountains and lakes?
Do they have trouble with mountains and lakes? Well, just think of the graph. I mean, if there's a long road around a lake from 2 points that are geographically close together but in distance far apart, then in the graph, the vertices and the edges, you'd have a long edge between those two. So no, it doesn't know about the mountains and the lakes. That's all hidden by the abstraction. You just got the vertices and the distances between them. So yeah, if it's uphill and your cars drive slowly, it takes longer to get. So of course you need to measure those times, either by actually measuring them. I suppose you could predict based on the geographical terrain how long it would take if you weren't prepared to actually drive it and measure it.
I guess for the A-star algorithm, that's like a pathological case, right? Which is your points, you have a massive mountain range in the middle, you greedily go right to mountain range, and then you have to go
and then try to go around.
Yeah, but the landmarks would fix it, I guess.
So maybe you'll put landmarks around.
But remember, A-star is not confused by the fact that there's something that looks geographic. Oh, sorry, yes, if you're using the crow flies distance, you're right, it would be deceived by that, yes. But the landmarks thing sorts that out completely, which is so brilliant, right? Just totally not deceived by these artificial things. Yes, in fact.
Mapping algorithms, which is quiet routes, so
yeah.
How would you codify that?
Ah, excellent question. How do you codify quiet routes or select for quiet routes?
You might have two sets of labels on your edges. Like you'd have labels on your edges which has a big number if it's a busy route, and then you'd have a separate set of labels which is for if you don't care about how busy the route is.
Right. You can sort of penalise.
You plot your route based on. You'd have two versions of the graph basically. You plot your route based on which one they chose.
Yes, I suppose you could plot your weights based on if you care a lot about how busy it is, but not really how far you cycle.
Yeah.
Then you could penalise the busy routes a lot. If you really care about how far you, then you've got to pre-compute all this landmark data for each setting. So yes, yeah.
What sort of trade-off between how many landmarks you actually put one there?
What's the trade-off between how many landmarks? As far as I mean, this isn't my work, so I don't really know, but I have the strong impression that once you get to about 10, going to 20 or 50 doesn't make a lot of difference. But going from 2 to 10 makes a huge difference. And you can see why, because then there's always going to be a landmark that's somehow, somewhat behind your destination. Maybe that doesn't work maybe that works better while your destinations are all near the middle of the map, right? So you might want to arrange that you have some landmarks that are in a sort of halo, more distant than really you're hoping for. Yeah?
Yes, you said that it's like a really big abstraction and it's quite powerful and pathfinding algorithm.
Yeah.
But so how would you think about only the mapping problems?
Well, I've used the mapping as my source of intuition, but the abstraction is still useful. That is, if I was doing, PERT charts for how long it takes my jobs to complete, then still the lower bound, there might be the lower bound estimation mechanism might be completely different, and landmarks might be completely useless. You may have some other way. So that's true. The landmarks thing is geographically. Is that true?
Landmarks thing should be true where the triangle inequality holds.
Yeah, true. It works anywhere there's a triangle inequality. I suppose the reason that mapping is sort of become quite dominant is because it's a big source of really big graphs. Right? These graphs have 30 million vertices in them.
Yeah, just curious if there are any other applications.
Yes, I don't know. Maybe something like routing circuit boards or something might have something of the same flavour, because they can have a lot of vertices. But yes, for a PERT chart with 50 tasks to complete, and just anything will work. Like you could do brute force. Yeah.
So far we've seen that to optimize the algorithm, we add more data to the algorithm. Is Dijkstra code to be the most efficient without adding more data?
Oh, how would you know? So your question is, how would you know whether you had found the most efficient algorithm without adding more data? I don't know, that's good. That's also a good question. That's a sort of, because every time you have an algorithm, you think, well, it could be a more efficient one. For some algorithms, like sorting, we know that there are no algorithms that have a complexity less than n log n, say. There must be at least that number of comparisons. But I suppose for this, I don't know of any complexity bound that says, could you do as well as linear in the length of the shortest path? Well, I don't know of a formal complexity bound, no.
Surely you could pre-confuse everything and then it'd just be a lookup.
Very true. So that would be one extreme. Yes, just pre-compute the distance from everywhere to everywhere, do a table lookup, now you've got a lot of data. You've got a very fast algorithm. That's a very good point. Yes, I should in this sort of talk, because there's this dial between not much data and a lot of computation, and a lot of data and no computation, and this A-star landmark thing sits really nicely in the middle. Sweet spot. Oh yes, yeah.
So how about, for example, Google? Do they pre-calculate lower bounds for the Cartesian product of every possible landmark?
Oh, what do Google pre-calculate? I don't know. Does anybody work for Google? No. I have the faintest idea.
Like, for example, the Cartesian product of every possible landmark to every possible destination. That would be quite a big data set.
So every possible landmark, if you only have a few dozen landmarks, then computing the distances to every destination, that's not so bad. Right. If you've got 10 landmarks and 30 million destinations, not so bad. If you've got 30 million landmarks and 30 million destinations, now you're into something quite big.
No, it has to be a concept of local landmarks, right?
Local landmarks, yeah. That's right.
Then you have
maybe you could do, So I think you can see why, just from this dialogue, right, that this is a much richer problem than you might at first suppose. Right, that there's stuff to be had. I'm in your hands now, because I'm done. We can go on as long as you like, but it's not me keeping you all here. It's you. In particular, you're the chair. There was somebody near the back.
I have a question around, like, you showed an example of an evaluation of, like, performance on a particular map. Is there a set of tests that, like, all the papers do in order to compare the performance?
Yes, so there are papers. In fact, I read one of them on the, in preparing for this talk, and the paper was it said nothing about any of the algorithms. It just gave 20 algorithms and gave their performance against the particular data set. But it was a 1998 paper. I don't know whether there's a fit for the 21st century data set that everybody uses. It wouldn't surprise me if by now there was, because people increasingly, particularly in these sort of cloudy days, are thinking, I'll just put my data set up where everyone can get it in. But I don't know for sure. It would make sense, right, to say. I bet that if you wanted Andrew Goldberg's database of all the European roads, he'd probably give it to you. But whether that's, whether everybody's using the same one, I don't know. Yeah.
So when you talked about A*, you talked about having domain knowledge about class of graphs.
Yes, about the lower bound thing, that's domain knowledge, yeah.
And then we went straight to domain knowledge about specific graph. Is there any domain knowledge in those two?
Oh, well, is there any domain? So I gave you the landmark stuff was domain knowledge about geographic graphs. So you're saying, is there any sort of property of graphs in general?
Well, the landmarks is the property about one graph, which is the graph of the roads that we want.
Well, yes, it pre-computes information about one graph.
Right.
Yes. I think without pre-computing anything, I mean, even the geographic location of each node, that's sort of domain specific. We need to know that to compute the crow flies distance.
One more question?
Sorry?
Let's do one more question and
then
we'll wrap it up.
I was just going to ask if you happen to know what Microsoft use in there.
What do Microsoft use? I don't know, but I think it's highly likely that they use something like the things that I've shown you. Because Andrew, he works for Microsoft Research, but I'm sure he was talking to the Bing guys. Right? So, but I'm sure this would be bizarre if he wasn't, rather than because I have personal knowledge. But I bet it is. That's what Bing is doing. Good.
Oh, shall we take it to the pub?
Yeah,
I don't know if you can come.
I need